Hey guys, what is up, and I welcome each and every one of you to a new League of Legends video. So it's that time once again to take a look at the best champions as of right now for patch 7.12. There are definitely going to be some familiar faces, but there's also going to be some new faces rising to the top and being considered one of the best champions to play at the very moment. So as usual, if you guys end up enjoying this video and you want me to continue making them, then let me know by simply hitting that like button. It does help a lot. And this video is going to be made in collaboration with ProGuides, a very familiar name by now, I'm sure. It is a website that tries to improve your overall League of Legends gameplay knowledge and all that good stuff to try and make you just a better player. There's a link to it down below in the description where you can check them out and try out their free trial. There is literally nothing to lose, so I highly recommend checking them out. But without much further ado, let's get right into the best champions of patch 7.12. Now I want to start things off by talking about Jarvan. Now this guy has definitely risen in popularity and just in terms of win rate and success rate and all that good stuff, because not only is he just really strong, does he counter a lot of the current meta champions, especially the ADCs, but at the same time he's got a good laning phase, he does good damage, he plays well as a bruiser off tank type champion, and on top of this he can be played in two roles to some really good success. Now those two roles are obviously without question top lane and jungle, and whichever one you decide to play him, you're probably gonna be doing quite well. He also offers a nice steroid to his own ADCs if you use your flag properly, and you can buff their attack speed and make them even better, especially since at the moment the ADC meta is quite strong and ADC is a very good role. So all in all, I mean, this guy just provides a decent amount. He still has good damage. He's just a solid all-around well-made champion that just fits the meta and offers a lot to the team, and he can just be a very strong champion. So I highly recommend you please pick him up. If not, you may want to consider banning him. But regardless, here's the build if you want to play Jarvan. This one's going to be specific to top lane. So your keystone of choice is going to be Grasp of the Undying, because it is the dueling bruiser type keystone that you want to have, especially if you go tanky items, which you do with Jarvan, since you're most likely going to be going for things like Black Cleaver, Titanic Hydra, and then defensive items like Gargoyle Stoneplate, maybe something like a Guardian's Angel, Randuin's, maybe even a Sunfire. It really just depends on what you're facing on the enemy team, but this is the recommended build overall. Now following Jarvan, I want to talk about yet another new face, and that champion is going to be Fiora, obviously for the top lane. Now I feel like Fiora is actually really OP. Now she's kind of a special champion in a way, because I feel like in the lower elos, unless you really know what you're doing, she's a little bit subpar, honestly, kind of like a Yasuo, you know? If in the lower elo you're playing Yasuo and you don't do well, or the person just isn't just good enough for the champion, then they will feel lackluster. But as you go up in elo, I mean, the champion just gets stronger, and Fiora is a great case of that, because if you know what you're doing with her, and if you play her well, and if you get fed with her, my goodness, is she strong. I mean, she's insanely hard to deal with. She can literally dodge every single damn ability in the entire game, including summoner spells like Ignite Exhaust with her W ability. So she's very strong. She can duel almost any champion in the game, especially if ahead. Very difficult to stop, and I don't know, she's just kind of a champion that you don't want to risk sliding through the banning phase, because if she gets on the enemy team and she gets a lead, it's hard to stop her. So with all that being said and done, let's take a quick look at the build that you want to run when playing Fiora. Fervor of Battle is going to be your keystone of choice. For items, I think Black Cleaver with Titanic Hydra or Ravenous Hydra are both quite good, Ravenous Hydra probably being the better option. You can also go Triforce instead of Black Cleaver if you really want to. Death's Dance is great, Guardian's Angel, maybe Bloodthirster, maybe a mild Malmortius, just depends on what you're facing, but all of those are great options. But let's move along and go all the way into the jungle. As usual, we have plenty of champions to talk about, but here we're going to be seeing some very familiar faces, because in my opinion, they're still definitely at the top. So the first champion that I want to talk about is going to be Ivern, because once again, Ivern is just not getting nerfed. I mean, his shield did take a little bit of a hit, but apparently that wasn't enough. He's still the exact same champion. He's still a top tier jungler without question, still provides a lot to his team. I mean, utility junglers nowadays are actually really useful, because again, ADC at the moment is strong, and having a jungler like Ivern, or maybe the one we'll talk about soon like Nunu, that can not only just disrupt and play the objective game very well because of the nature of the champion, but at the same time they add a lot of great utility for the team, especially the ADC. Daisy is still as strong as ever and extremely difficult and annoying to deal with, and I mean, Ivern at the very end of the day is still very much Ivern. So let's very quickly take a look at the build, even though it should be quite familiar by now for the champion. Wind Speakers being your keystone of choice, your runes are the same as always, and literally everything else is actually the same, because nothing has really changed. He's still being played to the same level and to the same way he's always been played, because he's just not getting nerfed enough. Following this, we also have Nunu in the jungle. Again, very similar to Ivern, a very annoying champion that just does annoying things, but also provides fantastic utility and peel for the ADC. This guy literally walks around counter jungling, getting early dragons and early objectives, and just kind of playing the map game very well. You don't really hard carry with this guy, you don't really hard carry with Ivern, but you make your team just insanely more difficult to stop. So as long as your team isn't full of people that just are inting, he'll be an Ivern as well, very welcomed. In a teamfight, running around with Nunu's Ice Blast and using it on the enemy ADC and making them essentially useless on top of your ultimate as well just sets up the perfect environment for your backline to just dash in and do their thing and damage everyone down. So I truly feel like Nunu is strong in a very similar reason as to why Ivern is strong. They're very similar champs in what they do and what they accomplish. So with all that being said and done, let's take a quick look at the build. Stoneborn Pact is going to be your keystone of choice, again, to even further increase the amount of utility you bring to your ADC and your overall backline. And on top of this, you want to go for some pretty standard runes. Your items will be usually Red Smite because it just helps you have that extra damage early game with the true damage. And then you want to go kind of AoE defensive type items like a Frozen Heart and things like that. Now the final champion I want to talk about in the jungle is yet going to be another familiar face. That's going to be none other than Zac. Now I believe Zac actually got nerfed not too long ago, so his win rate definitely did drop. It's not as insanely just OP as it has always been for several patches, but the point is the fact that he's still very much up there. I mean, alongside someone maybe like Warwick, who I'm not going to talk about in this video, but is also a good jungler, he still provides more or less the same thing, just very slightly less effectively. But at the end of the day, I mean, he's still strong because he still has great gank pressure. He still can build insanely tanky items and be insanely tanky, and percent heal from the blobs that he picks up. He still has the free revive passive. I mean, his Q is still really strong and provides a lot of CC. And at the end of the day, he's also very much Zac. He still has really good ganking power as well. And I mean, he's still hard to stop. Pretty much everything I've always been saying about Zac still applies, it's just at a slightly less level. It's not as insanely OP, but it's still extremely strong and effective. So with that being said and done, let's take a quick look at the build that you want to run when playing as Zac. Now your keystone of choice without question is going to be Courage of the Colossus because he is a tanky initiator type champion, and this is exactly what you want to make that even better. For your items, you can definitely go the blue smite into a Cinderhulk as well, and then just get tanky items. Again, just depends on what you're facing and the type of resistances that you actually need. But everything else should be self-explanatory, and you should have been seeing it for quite a bit now. But next, I actually want to move all the way down into the bot lane because there's two ADC champions that I want to quickly touch on. Now, the first one is going to be a new face, and that's going to be none other than Ziya. Now, Ziya is very strong. At least I think she's insanely strong. She has just an abysmal amount of damage in her kit. Her E ability is actually pretty damn busted. She's pretty much the only ADC that has an actual ability that lets her just escape certain death, being her ultimate, of course. And once you get Runaan's Hurricane on this champion, I mean, she's just dealing damage to everyone because Runaan's, of course, is splitting up. Her feathers are going through people and dealing bonus damage there, and I mean, there's just a whole bunch of damage coming out of this one single champion. And the cool thing about her is very similar to someone like Twitch or Kalista. The longer the fight goes, the more feathers that she has set up, especially with her ultimates, the more damage she'll do with her E, the more snares she'll get, and it's definitely a scary sight for the enemy team. She also scales quite well as well, so later on to the game, she's not gonna fall off. She's still gonna be doing a lot of damage. She's still gonna be extremely useful and effective, so I don't know, I feel like Ziya is rising to the top at the very moment, so you may want to watch out for her. She's really strong. Here's the recommended build when playing the champion. Now, Warlords is going to be your keystone of choice, though going further is not a bad option either. You want to run the standard ADC page right here. You can see with the attack speed quints, and for items, going Essence Reaver into a Runaan's into IE seems to be the build of choice, so you can switch it up if you really want to and go more of a duelist type Ziya build, being something like maybe a Bork with the Phantom Dancer or Essence Reaver with the Phantom Dancer. Now the final champion I want to talk about before going into some honorable mentions is going to be Draven. Now Draven is still a very strong champion for the ADC role. He hasn't been nerfed. He's still fantastic for solo queue because he has immense lane pressure. He's still one of the best ADCs for snowballing just because of his passive. And I mean, this guy, if he gets his items, especially the current OP build with him on Death's Dance, he's very hard to stop and he's life stealing a ridiculous amount of life. So all in all, I think Draven is still easily one of the best ADCs at the moment, next to Ziya and maybe someone like Twitch and even Jhin slowly rising up in popularity. So this is probably not a champion you want fed on the enemy team. The build for Draven is as follows. Like I said, going Death's Dance is insanely good on this champion and makes him pretty damn OP. Fervor of Battle is most likely going to be your keystone of choice, though you can probably get away with Warlords if you really want to, but everything else should be somewhat self-explanatory. Now I have a couple of honorable mentions that I want to go over, the first of which being Malzahar for the mid lane. This guy didn't get nerfed, but he's still really strong, he's very easy to play, and he's quite effective. So if you wanted to play mid lane, or if you got autofill to mid lane and you don't know what to play, Malzahar is probably a good pick. But next to him, there's also Cassidy. He's a champion that I personally still love to play and I still think is really strong, and he still counters a lot of the current meta mid lane champions as well, so not very difficult to play, does take a bit of practice, but not as much as many other mid laners. So Cassidy is still a very strong champion. And following this, I also want to quickly touch on Rek'Sai. Now ever since Rek'Sai got reworked, she actually was pretty weak, but then she got buffed and now she's actually slowly rising to the top, and I feel like in a couple of patches or in a couple of weeks, she may actually be considered to be a top 3 jungler. But either way guys, that is about it for this video. There you have it, the best champions as of right now for patch 7.12. Let me know what you think about it down below and in the comments. If you enjoyed the video, definitely hit it with that like button, subscribe if you haven't, check out pro guides down below, and I'll see you guys for the next video. Peace.